Hi, today we're going to be putting paper mache on our sculptures. So the first thing you want to do is take some tissue paper. Make sure that your hands are dry and the part on your table where you're working is dry because the tissue paper will stick to it very easily, and so we want to start a dry surface. Then you're going to take your tissue paper and tear it or cut it into shapes that are about this big. If they're bigger, it's going to look wrinkly when you're finished. And if they're smaller, it's going to take you a very long time and be frustrating. So I'm starting with white first because on my sculpture, I have lots of words from the newspaper that show through. So anywhere there are words showing, I need to put a layer of white tissue paper to cover those first. And then when I'm done with that, I could go back with my color. So notice how I have all my pieces of tissue paper laid out flat. I don't have any on top of each other. There's a reason for that. We're going to use our paintbrush to pick them up, and if they're stacked on top of each other, we can't do that. So you want to find some place on your sculpture where you could hold and not get glue on your fingers. You want to try your best to not get glue or water on your fingers while you're working with this. If your fingers are wet, the dye that's in the tissue paper will come off onto your fingers and it's difficult to get off. So I'm just painting some glue onto my sculpture. Then I'm going to use my paintbrush to pick up the tissue paper so I don't have to get my hands dirty. So I'm going to take my paintbrush, tap one of the pieces of tissue paper, and then lay it onto my sculpture. And then I'm going to put a layer of glue on top of the tissue paper. So you have glue under the tissue paper, and then you have glue on top of it. And you want to use your paintbrush just to smooth out the edges. You want this, when you're done, to look like you painted it. You don't want it to look like there's paper stuck all over it. So that's why you have to put that layer of glue on top. So you're going to go through, you could cover the entire thing with white first if you would like, but you mostly just need it any place where there's words showing. So if you have tape somewhere, you don't have to worry as much about covering that with white first. So once you've gone through and you have all of your words covered, it's hard to see because the white tissue paper is pretty translucent, see-through, so it's hard to tell while it's still wet. But I know I've put white tissue paper all in this area. Then you can start with your color. So throw away any of these pieces that you tore up that you don't need anymore. And then I'm going to go to my color. So I'm going to use some yellow, and I'm going to do the same thing. So you have to make sure that your hands are dry and that the table that you're working on is dry. Otherwise, the tissue paper will stick to your wet fingers or stick to the wet table, and also the dye in the tissue paper will come off of the tissue paper and get onto your hands. So you have to really make sure that you are not getting your hands wet with water or your hands wet with glue. So remember, we're tearing these into pieces this big and laying them all out flat so they're not overlapping each other. Hold onto your sculpture somewhere where you're not going to get glue onto your fingers. Use the paintbrush to pick up your tissue paper, lay it on top, and then do a layer of glue on top of the tissue paper too, so that all the edges stick down and the whole piece of tissue paper looks shiny. And this time you need to do the color over the whole surface. So you're doing it over the tape and over the newspaper. You're probably going to be able to see the word showing through today, but after it dries, you shouldn't anymore. So you're going to work through the whole thing until you don't see any newspaper or tape anymore. Always putting glue underneath the tissue paper and then putting glue on top and using your paintbrush to smooth it out. Trying your best never to get your hands in the glue or in water, and never touching the tissue paper with your hands. That way the dye doesn't come off on you and it doesn't get stuck to your fingers, which is a not great feeling. So just keep working at it. Anything you have, any tissue paper you have left over, throw away. Don't leave on the table for the next class. That's it. Bye.